Welcome to Tyrompers No Limit Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks so much for tuning in to Tyrompers No Limit Podcast, episode number 95. Guys, we are fired up. We got a returning champion. You guys should recognize this young man to the podcast. He is most known for wearing a shirt less than I do. I think he's the only man in North America that wears a shirt less than I do. He eats pizzas. He eats burgers. He's showing us his abs year round. This guy is an absolute beast. Crusher of life. Welcome back to the podcast, Mr. Alex Feinberg. How's life going for you, brother?
Life's going great, man. I can't complain. I got a wonderful bacon bison jalapeno burger that I'm smashing for lunch, not counting calories, because that's not the way we want to live life. I can't imagine any other way to live. Eating cheeseburgers on a Friday.
I'm with you, man. I think, I probably got messaged more after our podcast than any other guest I've ever had, just about a lot of takeaways and a lot of knowledge that you dropped with people. The double win concept about how you won't cheat good taste and also very healthy. A lot of these different ideas that you're really, really great at, man. And so I just wanted a chance to hop on, talk to you. I have some questions down for you, but mostly just chat, man. So give us an update. What's new in your life in the last few months, man?
Well, I've been the bachelor my entire life because I always thought that life was expensive. And I always, I despite the fact that I do a lot of cool things, I'm quite cynical about how life works. And I noticed that a lot of people, when they start having families, they're in corporate jobs and they're encouraged to take on a lot of debt. And so all of a sudden they have all these really high fixed expenses. And then they're stuck, because when you have high fixed expenses, it's really hard to not do the extra 15 hours a week that makes you $10,000 more per year.
Yep, that's right.
And I didn't want that. My entire life has been built around avoiding slavery. And so I never thought, I thought that I need like millions of dollars before I'm going to start a family, because I just didn't think that it was, financially prudent to do it any other way. Now, before amassing millions of dollars, I ended up meeting my far-right Latina girlfriend, who's been a great addition to my life since New Year's 2022. It was our first date. And so she told me early on when we started dating, like before our first date, she said, I have at the time, she's about to turn 3-year-old in my life. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. She was very honest, very upfront about it. And I didn't know much about small children. I guess I did not realize how much time that they require, because I didn't have them and I didn't remember what I was like when I was that age. So it's fine, no big deal. And so, she was very careful about not bringing some random dude around her daughter. And so we went on many, many dates before I got to interact with her daughter, and then, dating close to a year. So, okay, if we're going to take this to the next step, let's see how it is living together. And so they both moved in with me at the end of last year. So we're approaching about a year. In about 6 weeks, we'll be about a year together, living together. And the 4-year-old now calls me dad, and tells other people. She mostly calls me Alex, but sometimes she calls me dad. And when she goes to school, like, I bought her a stuffed animal, saying I'm brave and strong, because we're trying to convince her to not wake her mom up at night when she's scared of things. And so I thought the best way to do that is to give her a bear, saying I'm brave and strong. And so she got out of the car when my girlfriend was dropping her off last week, and she was carrying her bear, because that's what they had at nap time. And she told the music teacher, she said, my dad got this for me. And so, at school, I'm her dad. That's what she tells other people. And, I treat her the same way I would treat a daughter. She's very smart. And I think dealing with kids, it's great for anybody in a sales role, because kids really illuminate human psychology. And the jealousy and the envy and the quick change of emotional state that you'll experience interacting with toddlers, 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds. It's like, let's never forget that humans are animals in terms of our neurological wiring, and kids are a great reminder of that. The every emotion that they feel is just a magnification of more minor emotions that adults feel. If you want to sell to adults, you got to understand kids.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, so I have 2 toddlers myself, so everybody that probably knows watching. And dude, it's a trip, man. And you don't know what you're getting into until you get into it. But that's awesome, man. She calls you dad. You're getting her stuffed animals. What like fun activities do you guys do together? Do you do like nightly walks and look at things? You do, jump roping? What do you guys are doing circuits yet? What are you guys doing, man?
Goblet squats, hide and seek, and tag.
Nice, man.
You just sprints. Yeah.
Bro, that's I look right now, brother. I'm at what 17,000 steps, 17,300 steps today. It's 30, and I chase my toddlers around a lot, man. We go explore parks. We go. It's really a great way to stay lean. To be quite honest, it's kind of a cheat code because these kids never wear out. It's like I don't know, man.
No, but they do. That's what I would contend with that, right? Because people say no. People say, how old are your smallest ones?
I got he's about to turn 3 in 2 weeks. So I have 2 3-year-olds essentially.
All right. People say 3-year-olds have like endless energy, but here's why they don't. No 3-year-old can run a continuous mile, right? If you just said, okay, we're going to just run.
Yeah.
They can't actually run for 15 minutes in a row because they're not going to run a 7-minute mile because they're 3. They can't actually run for 15 minutes in a row. So if you just approach it like a conditioning event, they can't keep up with an adult.
That's true, man. We're really big on red light, green light. So when I'm running them around the bar, run them around the block or whatever, it's like red light, and then they stop, and then we got to freeze, and we got to make a funny face or something. It's green light, and we sprint as fast as we can, and then so we're playing that game quite a bit right now. We're big into hide and seek around here too, man. So hey, you guys ever come out to Vegas, man? We'll combine forces. We'll
oh yeah, that'd be great.
Park some splash pads and do some fun dad stuff together, man. So how's that changed then, brother? Because I always kind of teased you a lot, man. You were always going on dates. You were posting some funny date stuff for a while on Twitter, just about these experiences. Girls not really believing that they thought you were a bot account because you're super ripped. You're a good chef. You're very smart. You got a lot of these good things going for you, right? So tell us about those early days, man. You're dating your girl. She thinks it's too good to be true, or what? How's that process gone, man?
No, there's plenty of issues that I have from a personality standpoint that prevent her from thinking that it's too good to be true. A lot of the traits that I think are really beneficial from corporate navigation, escaping from the workforce. A lot of it's like avoidant attachment, which women don't like, right? Because if your goal is to not be under the thumb of a third party, and you're always navigating situations as if, how can I be screwed here? You're not going to like approach a relationship in a way where women are going to feel as secure as they possibly could. And so, that's been a recurring theme. And it will be based on the experiences that I had as a younger adult. That's just how, I've approached life. And so, despite all the things that I do bring to a relationship, the fact that I do see landmines where other people don't, it's sort of the reason why I don't proactively offer relationship advice to people. I will give it if people like directly reach out to me. But I'm not going to proactively do it because I don't consider this to be an area of my own expertise. I think it's actually, it is related to me being as good as I am in other areas. The equal and opposite reaction is sometimes I have difficulties in relationships with women.
I got you, man. So as you navigate that, now does she work full time? Is she in a corporate gig? Because you have a lot of freedom now, and sometimes that could maybe bring a problem, right? So you've escaped. For anybody who doesn't know, Alex has worked at, correct me if I'm wrong, man, but where were you before Google?
Well, I worked for a conspiracy theorist hedge fund manager.
Conspiracy theorist hedge fund manager. Those are good stories. Then you went to Google for a while. Mainly got the Google gig because you're ripped and you're an ex-athlete. You're also intelligent, right? We talked about that a lot.
Smart enough to use that to get in the door.
Get the advantages where you can, right? And then you went and worked for is it crypto hedge fund or something like that after that?
It was a crypto exchange.
Crypto exchange.
So
Okay.
yeah,
And then you fired them, and now you've been completely on your own for several years, making your own schedule, being your
yeah,
own boss, right? So is she
yeah.
in that world too, or where is she at?
Well, you can never be in that world if you have a small child,
Mm,
because the small
gotcha.
child's schedule kind of dictates, well, I've got to be here, got to be there.
That's very true.
She has a job, and her jobs have been somewhat flexible relative to other people's jobs, and that she doesn't have to go into an office, right? So
Okay.
she's been lucky since COVID. She's been able to be remote, um, and she stayed being remote with her COVID job after COVID, and then her new job is a sales role where she can do it remotely. So
Nice.
in that regard, she's quite flexible, but she has, she has stand-up meetings, but we have meetings. I have meetings, right?
Yeah, of
Everybody
course.
has meetings,
Right.
right?
Yeah, even when you work for yourself, that's a misconception. I'll have buddies be like, "Hey, you're not doing anything. Can you help me this?" And I'm like, "Bro, you don't think I do anything? How do you think you build what
Yeah,
you build? You're working, you know? It's just like
yeah.
you don't have standard hours. Maybe some nights you work till 10 p.m. Maybe other days you don't work, right? As
Mhm.
much. Or maybe today my work was pickleball with a client and now I'm chatting with you, right? That sounds
Sure.
pretty good. But other days you're writing for 6 hours or you're locked in the zone on this other thing, right? So
Mhm.
you don't work for a corporation. So maybe tell people a little bit about like I want to know what your business is like these days, man. I know you do a lot of consulting, a lot of coaching
Mhm.
calls, a lot of digital products. What else are you out there offering these days, my man?
So this year, I think we're starting the transition from Alex, the jacked and tan, eat delicious food every day dude, to Alex, the ex hedge fund analyst turned Google employee who used his mind to figure out how to break all the rules in diet, fitness, and career and achieve freedom coach. Um, a lot of people who know me well realize that my diet and fitness approach are downstream from my life approach and the mental models that I use to navigate the world. People who are less familiar with that and only know me through fitness don't realize that all these fitness tactics that I've discovered are downstream of how my brain works. And so if I'm really wanting to serve as many people in as high of a capacity as I possibly can, we need to figure out how can I upload my mental models into other people's software? How can we start giving other people the Alex Feinberg cheat codes when they're trying to get their job at Google, or they're trying to get promoted, or they're trying to leave corporate America? They're trying to navigate the challenging resource constrained situations of their adult life. I think fitness, to me, it's easy. It's very, very simple. Everybody, it's a hobby of mine. It has been a hobby of mine for 15 years. I don't want it to be the central focus of my life, nor the people's lives whom I coach. And so we're starting to get a taste of, not just Coach Alex, the fitness coach, but Coach Alex, the corporate enslavement emancipator coach, the business consultant, the entrepreneur advisor. And so, more of my time is being spent and will continue to be spent on people who are interested in not just growing their bodies, but growing their minds.
And I love that, dude. I think what a great way to serve and help people too. If you can take a guy who's maybe overweight, feels stuck, trapped in a corporate job, there's no hope, there's no way out. I'll be honest, that's where I was 6, 7 years ago. And then, finding those mental models, those cheat codes to kind of, okay, I can see light at the end of the tunnel. I can have somebody help me. For me, it was Zach Hommel a lot, helping me bridge that gap and get there, right? But for you to be able to help, I know Zach's one of your friends, and Zach tells me he learns from you a lot. You learn from him a lot. It's great having people like that in your life, man. One thing I want to swing back to, and I love this about you, bro, I always have, is you're super jacked, man. Like, dude, you're a beast. You're an absolute beast in every area. But something you said back there, I think really hit me really hard when you said, I want fitness to just be a hobby and kind of part of my life. I don't want it to be the central theme of my life. And I see
Mm-hmm.
too many guys who it's their whole identity, man. It's all they can
Right.
talk about. How much I can bench, how much I can deadlift, what I eat, what I weigh, and it's like, man, I just feel I find that so uninteresting. After a
Yeah.
while, it's like if that's the best thing about you, like I've always wanted fitness to add to my life. It's a
Right.
part of my life, certainly, and I want to be healthy and fit for a million different reasons, right? There's no downside. But man, if I can't talk about other things and use my mind for other things, it kind of seems pointless to me. I don't know what
Well,
you think on
and
that.
it's also, if your goal is to be as fit as possible and you have kids, you're going to have to dial down the intensity of your training, because you're not going to be sleeping as well. Like, you can still sleep well with kids, but you're not going to sleep as well as you did without kids.
Right.
Because they're going to wake you up sometimes at night, or, you know, you have responsibilities for people beyond yourself, unless maybe you're an elite athlete, so you can pay other people. But most people,
Right.
you know, they're not that. And so, you know, for me, because we've had now there's other people in my life, I'm not going to be 100% when I'm in the weight room every time I'm there. And so I have two choices. I can train as hard as I possibly can, despite not being 100%, but that's going to put me at higher injury risk, especially because I'm 37 years old. Or I can say, you know what, the most important thing is that I'm healthy. The most important thing is that my body works and can continue to perform at a high level. I would rather take a B level workout today and not get injured than try to have an A level workout when I just can't do that, and then get hurt.
Yeah, I think that's so smart, man. I'll be 40 here in a few weeks, man, or a couple months here. I don't know what month are we in? 2 months, it looks like. We're in October. So yeah, I'll be 40 in a couple months, and I've definitely noticed that with myself, especially with young kids. There's times I show up to the gym and I actually say, today's workout is for my mind, not for my body. Like, I'm just here kind of putting in the reps, kind of going half speed, but it's something I'm just here showing up. So I'm a little higher energy today. I always feel better when I walk out of the gym, but it's not a day where I want to go until I puke. I still need to go be a high energy dad the rest of the day and have other responsibilities. So it's a part of my life again, and I'm going to use fitness to better my life, but it's not the central part of my life.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of times the people who are the most fit are the most fit because they're using fitness or the gym to compensate for weaknesses in other areas. Right. We talked about this actually in the group that I run on Wednesday night. We talked about why do some of the most successful men struggle with relationships? And, you know, in addition to some of the items that I mentioned a few minutes ago, I mentioned that a lot of times the most successful people are successful because of their insecurities, right? And so a lot of times what people don't realize about ultra successful people, because they haven't spent enough time around them, is that oftentimes ultra successful people aren't more confident. They're actually more insecure, and their insecurities drive them to create, drive them to produce, drive them to achieve. And, you know, you don't really want that if you're targeting life satisfaction. And so, you know, if I'm to be honest, I would think that insecurity probably drove me a little bit when I was younger to, you know, because when you're younger and you haven't accomplished anything and you're not known for anything, you want, especially as a man, you want the world to recognize you for being good at something. You want to stand out. And if you don't have that, then for a lot of young men, the gym is that. If you don't develop anything outside the gym, unfortunately, the gym will stay that thing for you for long beyond the time where it's actually safe and beneficial for you. Your body's going to end up breaking down. That's not something that we want to do. We want to be good at a lot of different things. And so people need to be careful. I coach people around this because a lot of our ability to be successful in life has to do with dopamine management, where people are pretty consistently going to invest in getting themselves better in the areas where they're already good, because those are the areas where their effort is going to be rewarded by the most predictable and reliable source of dopamine. I know if I continue to work out, I will get stronger. I know if I continue to work out, I will get better. So I'm willing to invest the emotional effort and the time to do it because I know that I'm going to get a little dopamine snack at the end of the month or at the end of the year. Unfortunately, if you want to get better in life, you have to invest in areas where you're not good. You have to invest in areas where it's not certain that you will get some sort of dopamine reward. But the reality is, if you invest in areas where you're underdeveloped, some of the greatest dopamine rewards can come in those areas because you have the ability to grow significantly faster than you do in areas that are already fully developed.
Dude, that's so well said. As you say that, I think about me with writing. So I was a pretty good athlete in high school and got some, got those dopamine hits from that. But I remember handing in papers, and I had one English teacher in particular, I can remember telling me, you didn't even try on this. Like, this is terrible. And I tried my best, man. I was like, damn, So I always had this thought in my mind, I'm not a good writer. I'm just not good at writing. And when I knew I wanted to grow a following, I'm like, okay, well, it's sort of what you just alluded to. I can keep going to the gym and I can keep doing pull-ups. I can keep taking shirtless pictures. That drives some engagement, right? Let's be honest. especially when you're in the fitness space. But I said, if I want to go to these different areas and these different realms, I have to become a better writer. So dude, I think, I haven't missed a day now writing in 4.5 years. Right. And that's how you get better at writing, is you put in reps, you take courses, you have to put yourself out there. But I had no dopamine hits at first. Right. It took a long, long time. But then as you develop that, now the rewards are greater on the flip side. So I kind of totally see what you're saying by that, man.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Totally. Yeah.
You hit on a lot of good points, brother. Well, I want to ask you a couple questions, man. I have a couple. I usually don't write pre-written questions, but for you coming on, I had some things today. I think you're one of the smartest guys I get to interact with. And so I wanted your take on a few things, man. So
let's do it.
Number one, man, I want to ask about Elon Musk. He comes in, he takes over Twitter. We've seen a ton of changes to the platform. We're seeing creators getting paid now. That's kind of good, kind of bad, in my opinion. We're seeing subscriber. He's made quite a few changes. The algorithm seems a lot different now. What's your take on the overall direction where it's going? Do you kind of trust that Elon has the best interest at heart? Do you think Twitter will look the same a few years from now, or what social media in general? Where do you see the trends going over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's unfair to compare Twitter now to Twitter 2 years ago. I think you have to compare Twitter now to where Twitter would have been had Elon not taken it over. And the reason I say that is because Twitter has a lot of debt as a company, and that debt is not fixed interest debt. And so as interest rates rise, the debt obligations that Twitter has will rise. And so Elon took a company over that was bleeding money, right?
Like 4 million a day they were losing,
something like that, right? Twitter was bleeding money, and as interest rates rise, I don't know how much operational debt they had when he took it over, but with the leverage buyout, they probably had more. But either way, right? They were not profitable. They were not close to being profitable, and so you have to realize that if a company is perpetually not profitable, eventually they get taken over by a company that has the resources to run them. And then that company is going to need to gut certain things, or rejigger the algorithm in order to make it profitable on some level. And so I'll be straightforward in saying I don't like a lot of the changes that have come post Elon, other than the fact that people are a little bit more confident that they're not going to get kicked off the platform.
Yeah, stuff.
That's a good thing. I think the algorithmic changes are not rewarding the best content necessarily. I think they're rewarding content that monetizes better, and the company needs to reward content that monetizes better so it can pay its bills. And so, as I look at creator compensation, I don't like creator compensation because number one, I'm not getting that. I mean, anybody with under
$1 million,
500,000 million.
You have $1 million or more, maybe you're earning something. I mean, I'm earning a few $100s a month, and like that make up for the fact that I didn't like it when it first came out. To be honest, I was one of the few that was like, I don't think this will be a good thing.
Right, because here's what happens when you start compensating creators for views: is the only creators who are creating content solely for views are not very good creators. Because if you know how to use Twitter, you're making far more money off of the type of content that people see from your account than you are from the sheer number of eyeballs on your account.
Yes.
So if the amount of money that you're getting from a creator payout influences the way that you're creating content, you're not that smart. And so we're giving more money to content creators who aren't that smart, who are creating like engagement bait that isn't that interesting to higher IQ people, but maybe it's interesting to the lower IQ people on the platform. I think what you're seeing on some level is like the democratization of Twitter, which is not what we want. I don't think we want, because Twitter stands out from other major media platforms in that I think the IQ level is higher on Twitter, certainly than on Instagram or TikTok. And so what you're doing, if you're incentivizing creators in a similar way that they're incentivized on other platforms, even though they're not getting ad rev shares on other platforms, but if you're incentivizing them to create engagement bait similarly to how other platforms will at the very least dopaminergically incentivize people to create engagement bait, I think the quality of the content's going to suffer. I think that's what we've seen over the last few months is some accounts are doing great, really like it, but and create an awesome account or awesome content. But I do think that a higher percentage of the feed is lower quality content. I also think that as people have realized that Twitter can be a monetizable platform, that more people are trying to monetize the platform, and so there's just going to end up being more spam on people's news feeds.
Yes, I see both of those things happening very much, and I see a lot of people pandering to that, like fishing for, asking these ridiculous questions that everybody knows the answers for, just so people will comment under that. Just like that stuff is so like kind of redundant, man, and you're starting to see a lot of that on there. So I wasn't a huge fan of that, but like you said, I trust, I don't know, I personally trust the long-term vision of it, maybe that once they become profitable, I think Elon maybe does really want to make this like a town square, really does want to make it like everybody has a voice. And so I don't know, I kind of just keep showing up every day doing my thing. I don't think about the creator fund like, oh, I should tweet more because of this. I just kind of live my life and share it. Whatever happens. It's, I'm kind of like you. If my goal was to make a living off of just creating content, that seems stressful and not fun, to be honest, too. And just very like, I don't know, man, I just tweet about politics. If that's all I cared about, I know I'm a smart enough guy that I would pick a side, doesn't even matter a side, and just attack the other side every day. And you could get so much engagement off this that like, but that seems like a miserable existence to me, like just absolutely miserable. So I don't know. What do you think of Elon overall, man? Just as a guy, as a visionary, as how do you think he'll be looked back on in 100 years?
Well, I think he's very smart. Some people who I think are very smart think he's a con artist, but I think, if you're working on the cutting edge, you have to be able to talk your way. You have to have people give you a multi-year benefit of the doubt while you figure things out. So there has to be some degree of salesmanship to what you do. If you're going to get the trust in people to get the funds necessary to accomplish anything. So, his IQ is higher than mine. I can't pretend to know what he's thinking. I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, is they look at somebody whose IQ is like 30 or more points higher than theirs, and they think they understand what they're thinking. It's like, no, you can't know what somebody who's that much smarter than you is thinking. Otherwise, you would be that smart yourself. Right. And there's no magic pill that we can take that makes our IQs jump by 30 points. So you don't know what Elon's thinking. I don't know what he's thinking. I want to think he's honest when he takes over a company like Twitter, because he thinks that I believe him. I want to believe him when he says that the First Amendment's essential for the propagation of a free society. And, when he saw that getting decimated under the former leadership, I think he thought that, well, I have billions of dollars, but what's the use of that if we don't have a free society? So let's make sure that we can keep that. So I very much appreciate his efforts, and I kind of like, his attitude when he initially took a stake in it and took a board seat, and then when they wanted him to shut up, he's like, fuck you.
I do have a lot of respect, like that interview where they asked him like, well, why do you tweet this stuff when it costs you money? And he like thinks about it a minute and he goes, I just don't care. And I think there's a level of that. I respect what he's doing a lot. I think people don't say thank you enough to him. Everybody complains and asks for a lot of stuff. And I do, even hearing you say the trend Twitter was going, who knows where it would be now, man. I mean, they were censoring people left and right. You could just say one negative thing about the pandemic and you could lose your entire account back a year and a half ago. I don't think people remember how bad that was. And so there are definitely elements that have gotten way better since he took over too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. And he talks bad about the people that we know are bad.
That's right. So, I do respect that a lot too, man.
And you have to think he's a citizen journalist too. He went to the border, like in El Paso or something. And he's like, he has 100 million people following him or more.
Dude, and he's not afraid to make powerful enemies, man. That's for sure.
Right.
A lot of these people most of the billionaires, they're not going out trying to make other billionaire enemies. This guy doesn't care. He's putting a picture of Bill Gates, like, like he's just people that he thinks are bad people. I kind of like that,
Right. And the DOJ is going after him. For SpaceX. And so he's making that's the thing, is he's putting a big target on his back, and you appreciate the gall to do that, right? He's certainly smart enough to understand that that's an implication. Right. If when you make powerful, and when you are powerful, your enemies will also be powerful.
That's right.
And he's a big boy. He knows what he's doing, and he has some pretty hefty fights on his hands. Somehow he's continuing to fight, and I appreciate that. And I hope he continues to have the energy.
Yeah, same here, man. We're in the same boat on that. Well, I like that. Thanks for answering that one, man. I got another one for you, and this one I'm really interested in your take on. And this is something that I love, just asking very smart people this question. I got an opportunity to play poker with a guy who actually was the lead designer on the first rover that landed on Mars and went all around. This was had like a 6-hour conversation with him, and he told me he used to be a staunch atheist, was certain that the Big Bang, and then once he started studying the universe and actually looking into it, he didn't pretend to have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but he believed in an intelligent designer. So I wanted to ask you, as a guy that I respect your intelligence a lot, are these things you think about, these big picture questions? Why are we here? What's the purpose of life? How did we get here? Is there a God? What happens when you die? Are these things that you think about often, and do you have strong opinions of, or are you more just, hey, I'm going to get up and power the day and kind of take it day by day? But how would you view yourself in that, Alex?
So I think that whether God is real or not, the people who believe in God live better than the people who don't. And so I look at it as, if you want to lead a happier, more fulfilling, more successful life, you'll either believe in God or you'll convince yourself to believe in God. And I started noticing this as a Division I and professional baseball player, where there's a lot of uncertainty in baseball, just like there's a lot of uncertainty in life. Life is so uncertain that you can't get through it if you think that you're on your own and you have so many battles to fight. I think one reason why we're such a medicated society is, number one, our stress levels are ramped up, more economic insecurity, more broken families, but also there's less God in our lives. And I think an atheist or a secular society is like one generation away from being a medicated society, because I don't think that we have the tools to deal with the bombardment of media messages, constant threat generation that we're existing with in our modern environment. So, whether God is real or God is not real, those who believe that God is real will make, more moral decisions that replicate better at scale, decisions that make it more likely for them to raise children who love them and will take care of them as they get older. I don't take the Bible literally. I look at the stories in the Bible, and I think most of them are not true. But I also think that they're parables. And so the purpose of the stories in the Bible isn't to create historical accounts of what may have happened thousands of years ago. It's to teach you lessons of morality and lessons about the human condition, which have held true for millennia. And one of the reasons why they've held true is because the Bible has existed in a similar form for thousands of years. And if it wasn't a functional document that helped lay the foundation for successful lives, then the people who believed it would have died out, right? Some people say, oh, well, the only reason Christianity is popular is because of crusades, because of imperialism, colonization. It's like, well, the people that the Christians colonized had their own religion too, and they were imperialists as well. So that's the thing that a lot of people won't admit is, when the conquistadors came over to the Americas, the reason why Hernan Cortez was able to take over the Aztec Empire is because the Aztecs were imperialists, and they made a lot of enemies. So Western Christians had no less aggression than the natives that they took over. They just were better organized. And part of their ability to organize themselves certainly was rooted in a common morality, a common social fabric that they shared, much of which was rooted in the Bible. And so, I do think that a life without religion, you're rolling the dice a lot. It's an unproven life. It is, you may be right in a lot of things. You may be free to do a lot of things that you wouldn't be free to do if you had Christianity or some other organized religion in your life. But I look at it like a startup. Most startups fail, right? Most forms of agnosticism will be inferior to organized religion. Maybe not all of them, but most of them will be. Now, if we want to get down to the technical aspect of it, do I think that looking at the universe, do I think that it requires some sort of intelligent designer? The human brain is not sophisticated enough to understand the structures of the universe. We create these rules like physics to explain our surroundings. Physics isn't true 100.0% of the time. Physics is only true 99.999999999% of the time. But in the extremes, these tools that we use to understand our surroundings break down. And so everything, like if you think about, we can see each other, but we can see each other only through a very narrow band of light. Outside, it's either ultraviolet or infrared. Our eyes are created to see things that we need to see to survive. Our brains are wired to understand things that we need to understand to survive. This does not allow us to see everything. This does not allow us to understand everything. We will never and have never been able to perceive everything around us. And so to think that humans can possibly discover everything about the universe that we live in is foolish, because our brains literally were not created and could not have evolved to understand our universe at the level that it truly exists. We only understand it at the level that allows us to procreate and grow as a species.
Keep the species going, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple things there. One thing you said that I get this a lot, like people, when I post about my faith or whatever, and my faith's really personal. I always say that it's, it's my faith. It shouldn't look like other people's faith. But I always have people say, well, what if you're wrong? Like these atheists will come on and be like, well, what if you're wrong, man? And I'm like, to me, it's a lot of what you said too. Like I use my logic and understanding to study both sides. I genuinely believe there is an intelligent designer. I agree with what you said. I think it's even on what you said about the IQ, Elon's 30 points higher than 50 points higher than me. I can't know what he's thinking. If there's an intelligent designer, they're a billion to the 100x time higher than me. So I can't understand these things. So I don't really try. But what I do say to those people that question me on that is I say, I would still choose to live the way I do and base my life off the faith that I have, because I think it's simply a better life too.
Yeah.
Even if I get one life on earth, and if I die, and I'll just be honest, I don't know what happens, man. I don't think anybody, you die. Is it a computer screen? It goes blank for a while. Do you go straight to heaven? Is there a resurrection at some point? People will debate this stuff all the time. I don't pretend to know answers to that, but I do think my time here on earth, like loving my wife and cultivating an awesome relationship and marriage that we have, raising beautiful, healthy children, going by a lot of the principles that I learned in the Bible, how to treat people. It's just a better way to live. Sure. Like a lot of the things to me just make my life better. And then you talk about like, well, you don't get the freedom that some of the agnostics or atheists do. But I go back even to fitness with that. Sure, man, it's more free to sleep in every day and eat Cheetos every day. You're more free to do that, but you pay a price for it too. Then you're low energy. Then you're probably going to die 15 years sooner. Then you're not attracted to the opposite sex. Then you're right. So sure, man, you can choose to live however you want. And I could choose to go cheat on my wife and break all the rules, but those things come with consequence. And I look at it like having that discipline and having that foundation of my life actually gives me more freedom than other people who quote unquote have freedom to do drugs, orgies, fill in the blank. I don't know what these people
do.
Do.
They're also lying to themselves, right? Because they think that, well, you're following God and I'm not. And it's like, no, your God is hedonism, right? Your God is hedonism, and your tribe is, whatever consumer products you purchase or politicians you follow, right? So everybody has a religion. You either have a formal religion or you have a consumer religion that's hedonism paired with materialism.
That's true. And with the hedonism thing, man, I feel like you can just never get enough. I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's like, man, it's never. You can buy the nicest, newest, but 3 months later, you need again the nicest, newest. And then you have the hottest girl, but then 3 months later, you're bored with her. You need the next one, the next one, the next one, right? So yeah, that's kind of like an never fulfilling loop. What's your best guess, Alex? If I just put you on the spot and said, what happens when you die? What do you think happens to human beings?
Well, before we get to that, I do think that regarding hedonism, because it's an endless loop, I actually think that that's hell. Right? I think that, when people talk about heaven and hell, I don't know if you go to heaven or go to hell after you die, but I know you can live in heaven or live in hell on earth. And I know that hell on earth is something that approximates perpetual pain relating to chasing an ephemeral target, chasing fleeting satisfaction. Mm-hmm. So if I wanted to guarantee that somebody was unhappy, I would make them addicted to something, right? Mm-hmm. Because they get that high for that much, and they spend the next 90% of their time, 99% of their time chasing that high, right? So 90 to 90% of their life feels like it's pain, feels like suffering. Also, they can get that one fleeting high, and then they go do it over and over again. To me, that's hell. And that's what happens when you make hedonism and materialism your God.
Man, that's a really good way of looking at that. I never thought about that, but I did that for a long time in my life, man. Like, even I could never really be present because it was that next nightclub, it was that next party, the next set of girl, the next whatever it was, right? Like that's a really good way. And that's the worst way to live, man. So
you created your own hell. Whether hell exists after life, we don't know, but we know that the life that you lived was hell.
Yes, it was not fun, man. I'll put it that way. It's way more fun and satisfying in the area I'm in now, man. I like that. Well, I appreciate your takes on that, man. Anything else you want to say to wrap that segment up? Any other thoughts? Do you think about this stuff often? Do you study any of the religions or Bible or anything? Because I know a lot of your friends are we have a lot of same friends, and we chat in the same circles, right? So
yeah,
I see Zach Hommel, we're praying together, we're telling stories together, things like that. I wondered if you guys had any deep conversations around this too.
No, I haven't that frequently had deep epistemological discussions with my friends, just because I think I'm not that well versed in biblical stories. I couldn't tell you in great detail the difference between the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism.
Okay.
I know that they're similar. I know that they teach similar things. I know that Jesus is a prophet in the eyes of Muslims, but he's not the Messiah, right? And I understand that Jews acknowledge that Jesus was a person, but they also don't think he's a Messiah. And Christians are unique of the three Abrahamic religions in viewing Jesus as the Messiah. But I don't know. I'm not very well versed in a lot of the stories of the New Testament. And I don't know how the Quran differs from the New Testament or the Old Testament, and I wouldn't be able to tell you which areas overlap, which areas are different. The various segments of Islam. Like, I don't know. At some point, I've looked into a lot of this stuff, but I spend a lot more of my time trying to understand human social circles and try to understand, like, okay, so what aspects of religion are replicated in the modern consumer environment? Oh, so basically every consumer brand tries to brand itself like a religion. So the golden calf story, every consumer product tries to create a golden calf because they want all of their consumers worshiping the golden calf Jordans, right? Or the golden calf watch or the golden calf car. And so that's a very, very, I would say, prominent Bible story because it exists in consumer life, where every corporation's tasked with creating a golden calf. I look at the communication styles of a lot of corporate executives, and I think that their communication styles mimic pastors, preachers, religious leaders, because like, if you're a religious leader, you're coaching people through uncertainty. You're trying to convince somebody that something that you can't prove is true is true. And so if you want to convince somebody that something you can't prove is true, whether it's that your strategy is going to help them hit their quarterly numbers, or that Jesus is resurrecting or is returning to earth, in a couple, at the next moment, there's a communication style that has been proven to attract the most believers. And I think that communication style is replicated across leaders of various sects within our society, starting from religion, but on through consumer products, businesses, etc. And if you look for it, you're not going to unsee it.
Man, I agree with you 100%, man. I actually study big churches and what they do, and kind of like, I feel like you can learn so much from how they run their operation to how you can kind of scale that down to yourself, right? Like I see big preachers taking 6-8 weeks off a year to go study and fill themselves up. So I've kind of like taken that approach myself. I don't make content for 6-8 weeks every year so that I can fill myself back up and study and learn and then go teach others. Like I think there's a lot of principles. One of the reasons I'll say that you're one of my favorite accounts and people on Twitter is that what you just said too. You're like, I don't really know because I haven't really studied that. More people need to get better at that, man. Like everybody's a freaking expert on everything, man. And it's okay sometimes, guys, to just say, yeah, I don't really know. Like people ask me, what's my take on Ukraine and Russia? I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't study this stuff, right? So I think that's a very underlooked part of intelligence that you just shared with the audience right there. So I appreciate that, man. I want to transition that into another funny tweet, man. Me and you got tagged probably 1,000 times on this tweet. It was a really big account that said something to the effect of, it's not really worth it to have abs in today's day and age because 90% of the time you're wearing a shirt anyway. So, just kind of fill out and don't worry about abs. And then everybody started tagging me and you and being like, enter Alex and Tyler. These guys wear a shirt like 9% of the time. So they do want abs. And I thought that was a pretty funny moment. I think you are one of the guys that wears a shirt less than I do, man. So you're in the Austin summers, man. What's that like going around shirts? You get a lot of looks, man.
This summer was I couldn't imagine wearing a shirt this summer. The summer was over 100 degrees like every day, 105, 108. But I think not wearing a shirt. So for me, it's not harder to have abs than it is to not have abs. Like, and a good example would be like, do you think it's harder to have $2 billion than $1 billion? It's like, there's fewer people who have $2 billion than $1 billion, but the actual act of earning $2 billion versus earning $1 billion is not harder. It requires different choices. Mm-hmm. And so the way that we both mapped it out is like, we're not living in the gym. Like our lifestyle does include fitness as a core central component of it, but we're not like skipping meals so we can look better shirtless. We're not eating cheeseburgers and pizza so we can have abs. Right. Like we eat all of that food and we still have abs. And it's because we prioritize different things that actually help you get abs, and the things that people think they need to prioritize to get abs don't actually help them get sustainable abs. They just require that they work a lot, and we don't do that. So we're not working harder. We're just living life. And if you look good shirtless, like you may as well not wear one and let people get jealous if they want to get jealous, but who cares?
Amen, brother. Amen to that, man. I like that a lot. I always just kind of have that attitude too of like, if somebody wants to project that onto me or you, I feel like that's a them problem. I'm gonna keep living my life, and it is what it is, man. I wanted to say one other thing too, man, on this. Like you mentioned baseball and being a pro athlete for a while and the impact that had on your life. I know you've written some awesome threads about it. I've seen a picture of you getting hit with a 90-mile-an-hour fastball in the face. Like just some awesome lessons. I came from a poker background, and I'd have 24 games of mid to high stakes poker going on at a time. And to me, it was this beautiful chaos, and it taught me so much about myself, how even things we've talked about on this podcast now, there's things I can't control. I could play a hand perfectly. You could hit the ball on the nose, but maybe it's right at somebody and you get an out. I could play a hand perfect and still lose the pot. I had to develop a lot of emotional control from poker. And I look back at poker very fond because I think it made me better at sales, better at emotional control, better at seeing life as sort of a game. Even when I approached business and Twitter and social media growth. I viewed it as a game. I know other people that got stressed out when people unfollowed them. I just figured out a better path and went this way. When they went that, they'd stay in their place. Oh, you just got to pivot, right? Like poker taught me a lot of these lessons. For you, you're such a wise guy who, you played pro ball, worked at Google, worked at startups, worked for a lot of these things. What are the biggest lessons maybe you've taken from baseball, from working at Google, from, escaping some of these things to get out now? What are some biggest lessons you've taken back from all those places?
You got to win, because for me, I'm a neurodivergent person. I think differently from other people. And if you think differently from other people, your strategy is not going to be mainstream. A lot of people are going to think that what you do doesn't make sense. And so if you want your boss to allow you to do something that's unorthodox, you need to be good, right? So if I tell people, I don't count calories, I think it's kind of bullshit. Like I loosely track macros, I track protein, but I don't count calories. The only way that I have any degree of credibility is if I win, right? If I look the way I look with my shirt off. The second I don't look the way that I look with my shirt off, then I'm just an idiot who doesn't understand the first thing about nutrition and fat loss, right? And so if you want to live life in an enjoyable way, you need to do some things that are unorthodox. Otherwise, you're just taking mainstream approaches. You're never going to get ahead doing the same thing everybody else is doing. So if you want to take an approach that allows you to get ahead, you can't do what everybody else is doing. But the only way that your boss or authority figures are going to be okay with you doing an unorthodox strategy is if you're successful. So life will reward you for winning. And at the same rate, it punishes you for losing, because if you're not successful, then all of a sudden it's like, well, what time are you showing up at work? How many calls are you making? How many emails are you sending out? You start getting on these very linear management systems that just basically make your life a plantation and ensure that you can't develop an unorthodox strategy to outperform. And so life works where the winners get rewarded with more opportunities and the losers get rewarded with more work. And if you want to break free, you need to win, so you're rewarded with more opportunities, so you can be more selective with your choices, so you can ultimately get rewarded more for the work that you do. Whereas if you lose, you're just going to be flooded with more work, more responsibilities, less time to break free. And that's exactly how baseball is. If you start off 0 for 20, guess what? You're going to have to go to the batting cage. And even if you're tired, you got to go, because your coach needs to see you working. You can't just think that you're just in a slump and you're not going to work your way out of it. Well, what if you're in a slump because you're tired? How are you going to get better at that if you're just going into the batting cage early every day? If you're tired, your hands are tired. And so the only way you can get out of that is by starting the season strong on your own, so they're not expecting you to get that extra early work in. I take that, I apply that to everything in life. Try to win early, try to win often. The other thing is just knowing that it's all mental, where with baseball, you're going to have a bad game 50% of the time. You're going to go 0 for 4 a lot. You're going to make errors. And if you believe that that's going to happen again, it's absolutely going to happen again. And so with baseball, you have to have an optimistic mindset, even if you have no reason to be optimistic, because the only way you can succeed as a baseball player is if you're unreasonably optimistic. The only way you hit 300 is if 80% of the time you go up to the plate, you're sure you're going to get a hit, right? Think about that.
Yeah.
You need to be sure of something that is only going to happen 30% of the time. You need to be sure it's going to happen 80% of the time for you to actually be successful 30% of the time. And that's how everything works in business, where if you have an idea, I have an idea, most of the time our ideas won't work. It just won't. It's like you think, oh, this is a good idea. It might be. It's probably not going to work. But you know what? It definitely won't work if you're hesitant about it. Oh, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. No, well, then it's definitely not going to work. But for every 8 ideas that you're certain are going to work, maybe 3 of them do.
Dude,
right?
as you're saying that, I'm like going back over the last 4 years in my life, and I've probably been certain that I have $50 million ideas, right?
Yeah.
And probably 25 of them just never took up. But I was so certain I put in the work for them. I created the course or the content, right? You have to have that deep self-belief. Otherwise, you don't have a chance, right? To give yourself the few that do break free and do get there. So yeah, that's really well said, man.
It's like having barrel conviction. Like you're just not going to get your barrel on the ball if you have self-doubt. So you have to be cocky. No, and otherwise you're just not going to put the work in. And so figuring out, like, learning that you need to have a mindset that encourages you to keep putting the work in, that's the most important thing. If you start to doubt yourself to the extent that you're not willing to put the work in the next day, you're like 10 days away from a total meltdown, right? So you whatever narrative you have to believe that convinces you to continue putting the work in, that's what you got to do.
Man, I love that you said whatever narrative, because I believe, and I'll take your take on this too, but I think everything you choose to believe is a choice. Like, I tell my daughter this, she's 8, and I'm like, dude, if you choose to believe that you can't do this thing, you are certainly right. But if you choose to believe there's just a matter of time. It might take me some time, but I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I will achieve that. You're probably right.
Yeah.
And so I really believe everything in life is that way, man. Like, when I decided I'm not going to be 65 and still working at this corporate job, I'm not. Like, dude, I didn't even have a plan, but I just started, okay, I have so much self-belief, and whatever I do is going to get me out of there. First thing I did was like a 10-month plan where I created some like Avalon fitness company that I think I made $260 in like 8 months, but I was so sure that that was the thing, right? What that did was a stepping stone. I needed that because I wrote 2 or 3 hours a day for that, or 2 or 3 hours a week, or whatever it was, to get me better at writing, to get me to Twitter, so I could write threads that be read by millions of people and actually get me out, right? So having that deep self-belief, and it's all a choice up there, man. Do you believe that kind of everything you believe 100%. In life is a choice?
Yeah, because back to our original point, you're not going to be successful your first time trying. Like, you need to have 6 high conviction attempts for every time you succeed. Right? So how are you going to have a high conviction attempt if you're mathematically aware that 83% of my high conviction attempts are going to fail? You'll actually never try. Right? That's why people who attain a certain level of education actually do poorly in entrepreneurship, is because it's not rational. You can't place rationality on a pedestal when it comes to entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is how many full faith swings can you take at the pitch, right? You need to take at least 6 full faith swings at the pitch for you to have a decent chance of winning. And the longer you can stay in the game, the more full faith hacks you can take at it, the better the chances are you're going to win. So if you only take 1 or 2, you're probably going to lose. But if you can stay in the game long enough to where you can take 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, it's very unlikely that you don't win. It's possible, obviously, but it's very unlikely that you don't win. And so that's why the people who believe in themselves ultimately will succeed in the long run, because they just won't quit, and they'll just keep trying over and over and over. They just won't give up. They'll be relentless. They'll just keep trying until it works. Whereas the people who, I don't know. Well, if you don't know, I know it's not going to work.
That's right. I saw an interview with Mr. Beast a little bit back where he said there was no path in my life that I wasn't the most successful YouTuber. He said maybe I was 60 before I hit it, but he said I was dedicating 14 hours a day every day to this thing, and there was no plan B. I was already there. Yeah, I failed 100 times before, 500 times with 500 videos, whatever that was. But there was no path in my mind. I wasn't the most successful YouTuber. And dude, you probably talked to 1,000 people. I'm going to be a successful YouTuber. Well, then they get a couple failures, and that rational mind comes in and says, dude, look at the work. No way, that's not going to work. Right. And then a lot of those people quit. And I think what happens, man, in life, I'm starting to realize this the older I get, is people see a guy like you maybe, and they say it's not fair. It's just not fair, man. He has all this freedom. He's good looking. He's got the abs. And it's like they played by the rules, so to speak, and they followed all the mainstream, and they got the education. They got in the big debt, probably 120,000 in debt, and they got the job. And maybe they're the same age as you, and they're like, well, dude, I'm working 10 hours a day at this job I don't like. How's this guy getting to do what he wants to do all the time? Well, it goes back to that. They're almost too rational. They almost played it too safe. They never had this sense of like, I can create and make life anything I want. They were too busy playing by the rules, right?
Not only were they too busy playing by the rules, they're so pot committed in the path that they've been down for the last 15 years that it hurts them to ponder any alternative. And so if you take a mental slave, the worst thing that you can tell a mental slave is that you have the opportunity to be free. Because what that forces that mental slave to reconsider is the choices he's made over the last 15 years, the sacrifices that he's made. Imagine if you spent 50 hours a week sacrificing for a company that didn't care about you for the last 15 years. The last argument you're going to be open to is how the company is manipulating you. Because you've told yourself a narrative for 15 years to get through those 50 hours of suffering every week, to get to your weekend so you can start watching Netflix and smoking weed and drinking and eating pizza, so you can recover for 48 hours before you go do it again. You told yourself a certain survival narrative. When somebody breaks you out of that survival narrative, it's actually very challenging. It's very scary. You need that survival narrative to protect you in the pursuit that you're presently in, that presently makes you income. If you don't have it, you can't survive those 50-hour weeks. And so when you tell these people that, hey, being free is a choice, you can make what you want out of your life, that's actually very uncomfortable for them. And what they want to do, and it's actually like you throwing a physically unfit person on a treadmill. It's challenging. It forces them to do something that they're not trained to do. And their instinct is going to tell them to get off right away, to reject it, find a reason. Oh, Alex has talent that I don't have. Ty's got an attitude that he was born with. Zach's got a trust fund. They'll just make up these things. Right?
I love the Zach trust fund one.
Right. They'll just make up these things.
Man.
It doesn't matter if it's true.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't matter if it's true. What matters is it helps them feel a certain way that alleviates the thorn in their side that's telling them, hey, are you sure that you're spending your time the right way? They don't want to be challenged. They're much more comfortable not being challenged. But guess what? That's why they don't grow.
Yeah, that's right. And again, we're not talking to anybody who might work a corporate job out there that they love, right? I think there's people out there.
Which is very few people. Some people do that.
I think some people do. They actually love and feel fulfilled by their job. But I do think there's many people that will watch this that will say, there's just got to be more to life, right? Like, I want to carve my own path and I want to go for it. And I hope you've taken something away from this, that, man, it might not be the first try, but you need to have that deep self-belief that what you do is going to work. And you can create that in your mind, and you can make your life anything you want. I'm a firm believer that 99% of people watching this it'll take work, man. It took me 6 years to carve my way out of corporate and kind of live life on my own terms, and to be able to take a walk with my wife this morning, fire out a couple tweets, play pickleball with a buddy, hop on a podcast with you, and take my kids to a movie tonight, right? Like, it took a lot of work to get there. It still takes work as I go through it, but it's all stuff I choose and I really love to do. And I feel like I don't have anybody over me telling me I have to do this or have to do that. And to me, that's what life is, man. That's the ultimate freedom. I feel more rich than the guy worth 5,000 times more than I am in a bank account, but he's got to do these things every day. Maybe he doesn't want to do,
Yeah, the biggest thing is that you have to believe that you are destined for something better. And that's something that I believed before I became destined for something better than a corporate job. Every weekend in 2017, on the front end of it, I was writing a novel. A lot of people don't know this. I wrote a sci-fi novel that was predicated on a social network being neurologically implantable in your brain. Right? It's crazy that Elon Musk took over Twitter, right?
Yeah, wild.
But it was about a social network that had the ability to augment the cognitive processing power of users of the social network. And it could augment the processing power of the users of the social network so much that you could not get into school. You could not get into university if you were not using this essentially AI, right? If everybody else is using the AI, you're stupid compared to the people who do. And so there was two ways, because this thing was so helpful. You either had to pay exorbitant fees to the social network to use the AI, or you had to subject yourself to the ads that the social network served you, right? And so basically everybody who couldn't afford to pay that social network $4,000 a month was served the ads. But the ads were like implanted in your brain. So you started thinking, well, like, oh, I support this war. I need this pharmaceutical intervention. I need all these things. And I wrote probably 95% of that book, and then crypto markets took off, and I was like, oh, actually, like, I understand central banking, and worked at a hedge fund that research why fiat currencies are scams. Like, let me think about this and invest a few years of my life into that. But prior to doing all this, I'm investing a lot of time on my weekends to escaping a life that I didn't want to live because I believed I was destined for something more.
Man, and that's the thing, man, moving your feet towards it, right? Like that, a lot of people say it, but it's just a daydream if you're not willing to put in the work. And so you got to live like other people are not willing to live right now so that you can live life on your own terms later. So other people can't choose to live that, man. That's huge.
And it starts with the belief. It starts with the belief that you're destined for something better. If you can't convince yourself of that, start with that.
Yeah, I love that, man. Well, dude, I appreciate it. I do have 2 toddlers that usually wake up around this time. So I'm probably going to sign off here, man. I could chat with you. I can't believe it's been over an hour, man. I feel like I could chat with you all day, brother. You're the man. I appreciate everything you put out there, man. Tell people where they can find you. And guys, you better go follow this young man over here.
Alex Feinberg 1 on Twitter or YouTube, Alex Feinberg Official on Instagram, Facebook, Meta Networks.
Nice.
I think Ty's gonna tag me on some of the
I'll be tagging you on all this.
DMs are open. Ping me if you got questions. Would love to help you out if I can.
Yeah, I can personally actually vouch too for many clients that have both worked with me and then worked with you on certain different things. And I have heard nothing but you always over deliver. You always give your clients an amazing experience. So guys, reach out, follow Alex. You get a lot from just following him on social networks. You also get a lot from DMing him, perhaps hiring him at some point. Unlock your minds, escape the matrix. He can help you do that too. I appreciate you guys tuning in, man. This has been episode 95, Tyrompers No Limit podcast. Go be kind to yourself. Go be kind to others. Let's go have the greatest day of our lives, guys. Thanks for changing. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, sir.